going on, brother?
Brother, what's going on? Very excited to be back today. I am very humbled by our guest today, and I think everybody. I mean, we're gonna really enjoy this episode today.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
I'm great. You hear that music?
I love it, man. It brings me
Besides,
back.
besides that, this is the anthem to get everyone excited for whatever's going on. Kind of proud of myself that I finally figured out how to mix, how to use my mixer for real. And apologies to Debbie again for last week, but I guess that's why it happened, so that we could really learn it.
I do want to say that we do not own the rights to that song, but we did want to play it because it's special. It kind of goes in line, just like you were saying. I do want to, before we get into our chat here, I do again want to apologize. How is our sound today? Can we get some thumbs up from our viewers? I think we figured it out. Our production manager certainly figured it out. He saved us.
Well, in the spirit of the Dallas Cowboys, we fired everybody the next day. I'm confident. I'm confident it's fine. We would have heard it already.
We want to apologize again to Debbie, our previous guest, and hopefully she can get on here again in a later date because she had a very, very interesting things to talk about.
She did.
But we can make that another show, another great show. So how's everything going, man? How's the week?
The week's going good. I wanted to talk about. I just started to have a lot of memories because of our guest tonight. I walked on the campus of Socorro High School in 1987. Well, we play football, so we were there early. Sometime in August, I guess in those days, we started school after Labor Day. I just so many memories. When I started, the school was under construction, which it's sort of under construction again. They just blew it up, and it's being rebuilt. Period. But 1987, that in this coming May will be it'll be 30 years since I finished. 34 years, I guess, since I started. So I was thinking of a lot of that stuff. I mean, I can still remember the 2 days in the front. We used to the freshmen played in the front yard, practice in the front yard, right there on Alameda. So if you drove by, you saw poor little freshmen beating the tar out of each other there. So that's what I was thinking about this week.
Yeah, earlier today I said I started in 91. I actually didn't. I started in 92 and I graduated in 96.
That's what I thought.
Yep. And when I started, a lot of the similar things that you were saying. But recently what I wanted to tell you is that recently I drove by there. I actually stopped for a quick minute because as you mentioned, Socorro is being literally almost rebuilt.
Right.
And I took a walk to that force field.
Yeah.
I hope you have the opportunity to go and check it out one of these days. For our viewers that had chance, it's probably gonna be one of the best, if not the best baseball field in El Paso. I can guarantee it, man.
Oh, Forbes Field. Forbes, yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
And maybe that's one other person we need to try and get on here is Coach Forbes. He ended up being able to reach the apex of Texas baseball. But because we have a great guest, let's just remember Socorro more. Let's talk about a lot of things and then her life, a lifetime in teaching. So with that, my name is Javier and we are Problems.
And my name is Jorge and Opportunities. So welcome everybody tonight again. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Our podcast, Problems and Opportunities. Someone a long time ago told my brother and I that for every problem, there's always opportunities. We've embraced that message so strong that we created a podcast around it. So each week, or at least each week, a few times a month, we try to bring guests in here to tell us their story. Maybe teach us a lesson or two, and in turn, have a little fun with our viewers. And hey, if you can learn a thing or two when you tune in, that's all we're asking for, right? Problems don't have to stay problems. Okay, there's always ways to transition, to turn it around, and I think at the end of the day, that's what my brother and I want. Again, we're very, very excited for our guest today. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys, you have a blast. If anybody has any questions as we're moving along and talking to our guests, please put them on our comments. We love to share them with our guests. Okay, so brother, go ahead.
Well, it is my true honor to introduce tonight. I'm going to call her a legend of education, a legend of Socorro. She's probably not going to like that, but that's the way I see her. Anyone who knows her, anyone who had her as a teacher, and even if you didn't, she was so involved in Socorro for sure and other campuses, and such a positive impact. I mean, here we are 30 years later, and and thankfully for social media, we can still keep up and talk. I'm gonna kind of hit on the highlights of her resume. Herself a graduate of Fabens High School in 1966, then later 1970 Sul Ross University. Started her teaching career, I guess, in Socorro Junior High in 1980, then Socorro High School, and then eventually America's High School through 2005, which where I assume she retired. Began the Cosmos, and we just asked her if, well, I graduated in 91. It was relatively a new program, but it's curriculum opportunities for science and math oriented students. And I'm going to ask her about Paul James, Mr. James. I think I know who he is. Uh, we will tell you that in 1995, received the Texas Excellence Award for Outstanding High School Teachers. Top 10 teachers in the state presented by University of Texas at Austin. Married to the great coach, of course, which we all knew. If you didn't have him or her, you had both, or maybe one or the other for sure.
For sure.
Uh, Mother of Roe, who I talked to the other day, and Casey. I hope I'm saying that right. Two wonderful sons-in-law, Randy and Joe, and grandsons Cash Day and Carter Day. And we see pictures, I think, of Cash. He's playing football. So it is my great honor to welcome Mrs. Sandra Reinhardt to the podcast tonight. How are you, ma'am?
I am fine. Thank you for having me.
Well, the honor is all ours. Trust us. It's just I know you and I have been talking about doing this for a while, but you had some weather in the town that you live in now. Tell us a little bit about what you endured. At least two big weather events.
Yes, in the beginning of August, we had our first hurricane, Hurricane Laura, and Dale and I, never having been through a hurricane and coming from El Paso, thought, oh, this is not going to be a big deal. But Roanne, our daughter, said, y'all might want to at least get in the closet because it's the center of the house. And so we spent the night in there with our little dog, and it was absolutely horrendous. We got
I
up
can
the next
imagine.
morning, we had trees everywhere. And although our home was okay, and then 3 weeks later, we were hit with Hurricane Delta. So, yeah, we've had some weather, and it was especially tough on a couple of desert rats that weren't used to it.
Yeah. How long? How long you've lived there? 6 years.
Almost exactly 6 years, yes.
Okay. Well, when you and I first talked about doing this, I know that you unfortunately had a lot of phone calls to make, a lot of things to do because of those weather events. But we're so glad you're here and are able to do that. Um, one of the first, you graduated from Fabens, and which is the next town over from Socorro, where we grew up, into Sul Ross. So I wanted to just ask right away why did you choose to go to Sul Ross? I know a lot of Socorro people went there, but why was that your choice?
Well, my grandparents lived in Fort Davis, and Fort Davis is just about 30 miles from Alpine. And I am very proud of the fact that I was the first college graduate in my family on either side. And so Ross was close. It was small. If you come from Fabens, you're looking for small. And I feel like I got an excellent education at Sul Ross. Plus, Coach Reinhardt went also, so that didn't hurt.
I didn't see, and maybe I didn't notice, but did you meet him there, or did you meet him in Fabens?
Oh, no, no, no. I had my first date with Dale when we were in the 8th grade. We went through high school together. So we
Oh,
have been married 51 years, but we have been together at least 60.
Wow. That's amazing. Ms. Reinhardt, on over at at Sol Russ. So tell us, I mean, is that when you went out there, did you live in campus, around town? I mean, what was that like?
I will tell you, if you were a young, unmarried female, you didn't have a choice. You lived in a dorm and you had to be in at 9 o'clock every night, unless it was the weekend, and you had to be in at 11 and you had to sign in and you had to sign out.
Oh my.
It was a whole different ball game from when we took our daughters to college.
So over, we obviously I met you at Socorro High School, and I was born and raised in Socorro City. You lived in Fabens. So tell us a little bit about your time there. How was that?
Well, I actually did not live in Fabens. I lived in Tornillo. But
Wow.
I went to school. I moved from Poppy's Pillar, Montana to Tornillo and started school, I believe, in 1960 in Fabens. And living there was great. I love small towns. It was a good place to be.
Yeah. I told you I was going to share two stories with you, so I'm going to start with the first one. This one's the embarrassing one for me. So I walked into your classroom as a freshman in 1987, and I was well prepared to do we called them honors classes in those days, and this was physical science. And I remember this so well. I went and sat at a table, just waiting for whatever would happen next. Met you, but then I had a young lady I was a freshman, she was a senior, and she was dressed. In my freshman year, we still had a designated smoking area for students. I think that was the last year. And from your window, yeah, can you believe that, brother?
Yeah.
From the window of her classroom, if I remember this right, we could see that area. But the embarrassing story for me is that the senior lady who was sitting right next to me was wearing a very short skirt and very provocative outfit. And Mrs. Reinhardt, without knowing who I was, said, "I need to sit next to this young lady." And I'm not going to say the name of who she is. I still remember the name. But she moved me in a heartbeat. And that began, I guess, the relationship or the know-how of who you were and what this class was going to be about. Did you? So on that subject, you taught obviously physical science. What other subjects did you teach at your time at the high school level?
Oh my goodness. I taught physical science. I taught biology. I taught uh, ballroom dancing. I taught technical writing. I taught technical speech. And I taught biology too, but I think that was probably about what I taught.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember the ballroom dancing class.
I don't either.
Really?
Really. I had a class, and it was a Cosmos class, but I taught etiquette, and we learned that men do not wear white socks when they're getting dressed up. We learned how to tie a tie. We learned how to walk with a book on our head, and we learned how to ballroom dance.
So now, that makes you a great ballroom dancer, I imagine.
No, I am not. When I needed somebody, I would get Coach Reinhardt in there,
and he was a great dancer.
He would attempt to help me. And then when the class was over, we learned how to fold napkins. We learned the whole 9 yards. And when the class was over, we had a dinner that was prepared by the school. I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name that taught the food class. Anyway, he prepared the whole thing. And one of the things I told him that I wanted was mountain oysters, because I knew the kids had never, ever had mountain oysters, but they did. After they ate them, they found out what they were.
Yep. I don't know. I don't know if all our viewers know what they are, but one day we'll tell everyone.
Well, heaven's sake, I didn't know what an oyster was until I was somewhere in between my mid 20s. I knew what a crawfish was because I don't know if you knew that, but we could catch those in the little canal across the street um, periodically. But I had no idea what an oyster was. Since you're revealing that you're a ballroom dance instructor, I'm going to reveal to you that I was a folklorico dancer, except nobody knew it in high school. Because see, that would ruin that would ruin my football image.
Oh, it wouldn't have
Um,
gone
the
well.
fake news of Javier in high school. I danced for 5 years in a professional company called Valle del Sol in El Paso, and I still keep in touch with those folks. But it was the greatest time, and it was strictly for folklorico dancing. My brother can tell you a little bit.
Oh, that's and he was great at it too. So don't let him tell you otherwise. I
Well,
would
I bet he
believe that.
was.
I would believe that Coach Reinhardt is a good dancer. I he was my track and field coach at Socorro, and he could never quite get me to do the right technique to throw a disc or to do the things that I needed to do to place. I never placed in any of the meets, but he was great at understanding the kinetics of the body. But the story I have to tell is I know you talked to me about, oh gosh, I at least 3 times to join Cosmos. I didn't because all I cared about was football and Bulldog Cafe back then. Um, so I don't.
Yep.
But it just wasn't. It kind of wasn't the curriculums that I wanted to do. I was just thinking of other things, but I want to say that in general, you were one of the founding fathers or founding members for curriculum specific kind of deals with the high schools, because now high schools, I mean, you want to do, I was just telling you about my son, right, that he's into technology, so that's why he's going to East Lake High School, because they have the SATA curriculum. You want to do business, you go another high school. You want to do medicine, you go another high school, right? And so were you one of the founding members?
Cosmos was developed by Paul James, who was a math teacher, taught across the hall from me. He and I spent one summer putting it together. The reason Cosmos was developed was because we watched our kids at Socorro, and Socorro was 99% Hispanic, not live up to their potential. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't, they never left to go to school, never believed they could go to school. And the other thing that we did it for was the females, the Hispanic females, because, you and I know that Hispanic females way back when were expected not to go to college. They were expected to get married and have children and live next to mama and daddy, and that was it. And we
Mm-hmm.
felt like the kids needed a chance. They needed to go. They needed to get away, and they needed to know that they could do it. But they needed the background. They needed the tough science. They needed the tough math, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's why we started it. That was the whole reason. And I could go through a list for the next 3 hours of kids that are so successful. And that's why I left Socorro High School and went to Americas, because Mr. Baca at the time had wanted to start a program up there. So I went up there and started Cosmos. And then eventually came back to my root, to my Socorro.
Yeah. Speaking of really successful people, we got one comment from, I'm sure you remember Sergio Lucero. Sergio Lucero was in my class. Went on to the University of Notre Dame, graduated with a degree, and he'll correct me, but I think it was aerospace engineering. I know he's had to do with the space program in a variety of ways. I haven't chatted with him in a long time, but there's an example of someone. I mean, he's just one of many, like you say. But he just, his comment today is, she actually just plain taught us about life. What do you think about that? You remember Sergio?
I remember Sergio well. I'm in contact with him. What did you say he said? I'm sorry.
He said she actually just plain taught us about life, and that's true.
Well, one of the things that we found with kids that left, let's face it, the racism is alive and well. It still is today,
Hmm.
but it was back then. When you lived in Socorro and everyone was Hispanic, you didn't understand what it was like to leave and run into that and to leave your culture. And I tried very hard to get kids to understand, if you'll go and you'll stay, you'll be so thankful for the rest of your life that you did, and it will be okay. You don't have to bow down to anybody, but go and experience what the world has to offer. And so and there were a lot of kids that did. I know I had one, I won't mention his name, that's very dear to me, but he went to Kansas and he went to play baseball, and his parents did not want him to go. Did not want him to go. And I said, if you will just go and say one semester, when you come home, your parents are going to be telling every one of their friends, Mijo is playing baseball in Kansas at college. And sure enough, he came home. He now has a degree. He's a coach. And they understood, but it's just cutting that tie that is so hard.
It is.
And I
It is
think
very hard.
I think the list can go on and on, Ms. Reinhardt. But I know from my generation, one of my he's still a pretty good friend of mine, actually of my brother's as well. And we were actually neighbors in Socorro, in the city of Socorro. Fernando Fernie Moreno, and he, from my generation, he carried the Cosmos flag. He was everything about the program and the curriculum and everything, and now a doctor, and he's another great story to tell.
He's a very successful doctor.
Yep, and his sister, his older sister, who I think is in between my brother and I, as far as years, equally successful. I think she's on the West Coast somewhere. And
She
in
is.
fact, Sergio just said, "I went to Notre Dame because of Mrs. Reinhardt." So there you go. This you probably gave many of us the same speech about going somewhere. I married Idali, or we call her Italy here. Same 1991 class, and she had already left Arlington before. I'm sorry, she left El Paso to come to Arlington, and she was kind of that last push for me because I started at UTEP. She was that last push. I mean, never mind that she's a beautiful girl and it was love at first sight and everything like that. But it was a big. Still today, I credit her with uh, giving me that, because it's breaking that tie. That's difficult, and it wasn't easy. God rest her soul, my mother especially, but that's why it was so important to have people like you, because we didn't know any better. You're right, we didn't
Well,
know any better.
I call it the Mijo syndrome. And I saw it so often. It was Mijo, Mijo, do not leave me. Please do not leave me. I will build another room on my house for you.
Yeah,
And that
Well, I mean,
and
I
God
think
bless the parents. I mean, I understand, especially after having children, and I understand where they're coming from, but
yeah,
you got to
yeah. Well,
cut
now
that cord.
now that we're all parents in this podcast, I know my brother. He's got two college girls now, and one of them, she's still in Texas, but she's not in Arlington. And then my kids, I mean, they're still in high school, but yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, when they're not home, I'm worried an hour later. So it's not easy.
It's not easy.
got another student, Monica Islas, who also commented that you were one of the best. She's not sure you remember her, but I'm sure you do. I'm sure You know what I do is I look them up on the yearbook because I don't remember everybody from my class. For God's sake, there was 600 of us, and we've all changed a little bit, gained a little, but yeah.
Have a
So I wanted to make sure. Yeah, but I talked to her. I'm not worried about talking to anyone, and so I talked to her recently, maybe even last year, about some stuff. So I try to keep up. Some of, you know, I was going to mention social media is great for this because some of my coaches from my generation, uh, this is how I mean this is how we communicate. I see what they're doing, they see what we're doing, and it's just pretty amazing. I wanted to ask you about the '95, the award you received in 1995. Tell us a little bit about what it takes to earn that.
Well, Mr. Quattrini was by far the best administrator I ever worked for. I worked for some good ones, but he was exceptional. And the University of Texas at Austin had a program where they selected the top 10 high school teachers in the state of Texas. And Mike came to me and he said, Sandra, will you fill it out? And I said, oh, Mike, it's more work. Oh, fill it out. Well, I did. I sent it in and they said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't, we picked our 10. You're not one of them. And so he comes back the next year and he said, let's try this again. And I said, Mike. But anyway, I filled it out. I worked very closely with Manny Pacias at UTEP. He was in the engineering department. He helped with our kids. And so I had him write a letter, and I feel like that probably helped with Cosmos. I entitled my talk or whatever we're doing today, Christmas Gifts. And I did that because I had to write an essay. And in my essay, I wrote, and I'm going to cry, so just excuse me, but I wrote that the first day of school for me was like Christmas because I looked on each child that walked in the door as a gift. And I looked forward to opening them and seeing what made them tick, how they could help me, and how I could help them. And so anyway, I went ahead and filled it out again. And lo and behold, Mr. Quandrini came in my room one day and he said, guess what? And I said, what? He said, they selected you as one of the top 10 teachers. And I'll never forget, at that time, we did not have, of course, cell phones, and we did not have phones in our classroom. So I left my class and I went to the attendance office, which was close to my classroom. And I called Dale. He was in the coach's office or something to tell him. And the next thing I know, Mr. Quattrini is in my room giving me a bad time because I left my class unattended. So, anyway, it was an honor. You cannot imagine what an honor. But I'm going to tell you a quick little story. It was a big deal. I mean, it was even Mr. Schulte, who was assistant superintendent, came down to Austin for all of this and my whole family and everything. And so, I had to get dressed up and make a little speech and this and that. Well, I was such a country bumpkin. I knew nothing about the University of Texas much. So I picked out the most beautiful dress you can imagine and wore it to give my speech. And it was maroon. It was A&M colors all over the place. And after I learned, I thought, oh, here I am in my maroon A&M dress. But it was an honor. It was truly an honor. And they paid every year for me to go back and be honored. It was quite a big deal. But I thank Mike Quattrini for that and Manny Pacias because I don't think it would have happened otherwise.
Gosh, you name these you tell us these stories and you put these names in front of us, and it just brings back so many memories. By the way, we were gonna ask you what the Christmas gifts were, what that meant. You just answered that, and that brought chills to my skin. I've always had a great deal of admiration to our teachers. Anybody working in schools and having to deal with everything, especially today, with COVID and everything that's happening. But at any time, I mean, during your teaching days, during when I was going to school, I got to tell you, when I went to UTEP for my bachelor's degree, and I have my bachelor's degree is in health science kinesiology. And that's what I wanted to do. I love sports, so I wanted to be a coach, a football coach, and then teach. When I started doing my internship, all it took was 1 week of being with kids in elementary school to realize I couldn't do it. right? And my admiration grew even bigger, just because I just, man, how do teachers do it? And now that I'm a parent, that I have my kids, and the things that I watch them do, I want to highly praise all teachers out there. It's not easy.
For sure. And he thinks, and I agree that you kind of answered it now. I mean, you got so emotional talking about your award, and that's all that we need to know. But
Well,
setting,
the reason
what do you miss the most about not teaching anymore? Did you hear me? Sergio was asking, what do you miss the most about not teaching anymore, retiring?
I miss the kids. Yes, I miss the kids. And like I said earlier before we started, if indeed I could shut the door and teach the way I did in the beginning before the state and the administration decided they knew better, I would still be there because I love teaching. Love teaching. I love the kids. I love the camaraderie with the other teachers. I love everything about it. But it got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore. And so I decided to hang it up. But I will say, with what George said, I had a reputation. I know I had a reputation. So there's no, of being a mean, horrible witch. I know that. But I'm going to tell you why I was that way. I substituted before I actually taught. I had my degree long before I taught. I waited
Oh
until my
my.
kids got in school and I substituted. And I had, they will test a substitute faster than anything. And I learned I'm not putting up with that. There is no way I'm putting up with being treated that way. So I wasn't. Now there were some parents that I could have done without, but there weren't any students that I could do without.
We absolutely knew that, and that's not stated in a bad way. That's just saying that the minute I'm telling you, the minute I walked into that science room, and you said you're not going to sit next to this young lady who's a senior and is dressed in such a way, and I was moved to another table as we were in science classes. I knew where I was, so to speak. I got a quick story about Mr. James. Mr. James, he wore a full beard, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think
Yes,
I
he
had him
did.
for algebra. Yeah, I think I had him for algebra two, and he started. And Sergio might remember this. He started a statistics club, not a class, not a. It was kind of an after school thing. But because fake news hobby was not too cool for that, even though I loved it, even though I love statistics to this day, I didn't continue with it. But I do remember Mr. James that way. I wish I would have continued. There's a lot of things I wish I would have done in high school, but such is life. But that's what I remember Mr. James for. Well, except for the full beard, because and then he started that club. But that was him, right? That was his. That's who.
Yes, I'm sure it was. Yes.
Okay. Got another question or comment. Mrs. Silva, let's see. This is from Monica Islas. You can do or be whatever you want. So, what we're talking about here, and what one of the things I wanted to tell you is, from kindergarten all the way through the college and different different things I've had in my life, you're definitely one of the top five most influential educators in my life. Uh, so, I want you to know that the passion that you brought and the you call it attitude, I call it, I mean, it is very important because guess what, of those hundreds maybe of teachers that my brother and I have had, and I think he agrees, here we are talking to you 30 years later on what we call a podcast these days.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, brother. And Ms. Reinhardt, I do want you to know that I was scared to death of you. My back then my English was very broken. I had, for whatever reason, my mom, who is, rest in peace, she would always keep me in bilingual classes. Just, it was a cultural thing, right? And I had bilingual classes all the way up through eighth grade, which is a lot. And that didn't prepare me well for high school. So once I started high school, I had a great deal of difficulty. And the thing I do remember profoundly is how much patience you gave all of us. And so I agree. Ms. Reinhardt, did you always know that you wanted to be an educator?
Yes, my brother, who is younger than I am, sat behind a little desk at our house for hours while I attempted to teach him. So yes, I always knew I wanted to be an educator. I taught labs when I went to college, and I really enjoyed that. And yes, I always knew. Of course, you understand, back in the '60s, for a girl, we didn't have the opportunities. I mean, I don't know anybody I graduated from high school with, especially a woman that is an engineer, is a doctor. I just don't know any. But there is a God, and He took care of me, and He got me where I needed to be.
You sure did. Because what I will remember most about our time today is what the reason you developed Cosmos, the reason you and Coach. I'm sure because if we had him here next to you, I'm sure he'd just shadow your conversation about what you were trying to do for the community of Socorro, the mostly Hispanic Mexican American community. And I can promise you, a lot of us are going to be thankful for that, are thankful for that for many years. Uh, so I'm going to tell you a story. This is the one that's hard for me to tell you. In that same uh, first day of physical science for me, you told a story of what microwaves do to you. And I don't want to say exactly what it did to you, but you gave us handouts. You explained the relationship between the microwaves and the radiation and and cancer and things like that. Well, guess what I did? I went home, and this is a hard part because my mother's not here to listen, but I went home and forbid my mother to buy a microwave. And this was 1987. Um, so, not that my mother was eager or needed a microwave. She really probably couldn't use it the way she ran her home. But I can promise you that was, I said, Mrs. Reinhardt said microwaves are just cool, and that's what I preached for 4 years until I met Miss Italy. And we got married. So graduated '91. We got married in the next fall. Okay, we got married at 19 years old, and we had our first apartment, and we're getting all the stuff that's needed. And she wants to buy a microwave. I mean, this is only 4 years after. I'm still sold. I'm still no, but we bought a microwave. But for for all of her life, and I hope that my mom met you at some point, or we saw each other. Uh, that's what I'm getting to. Is she always wanted to know what teacher was it that forbid me to buy a microwave? But do you remember? Do you remember doing that? I'm sure you did it to all your classes.
Yes, yes, I do remember, and I don't have a microwave, would not have a microwave if somebody gave it to me. I will tell you that both my children use a microwave all the time, but I also don't let the dentist x-ray me. I have a big hang up, but that's me. So, but God bless your mother. He listened.
Yeah, yeah, she did, and like I said, I mean, well, years later, she definitely did buy a microwave because it was handy for some stuff. But
Well, I want to say the best part of that story, Ms. Reinhardt, is I didn't quite
Yeah.
understand what was happening. Now, my brother and my mom, they would think very much alike. Their minds work very similarly, and so this ongoing debate, conversation, and trying to figure a microwave out it probably went on for about a year. Um, all I wanted was a microwave to heat my food up.
yeah, well, I'm not going to deny we gave in. I'm not even going to pretend to deny that. We have every convenience there is to have. We even have coffee machines that just make one cup at a time. So I'm not going to deny any of that. But for the length of my life, you will always be tied to my mother in that way because that was the it was one of those stories that just and Sergio and Monica are saying the same thing that they they both took to that advice. So I wanted you to know that because those are the kind of things that maybe never said about something you might have said 30 years ago that stuck with with someone this long.
So, Miss Reinhardt,
And I need to be careful about what I said.
so offline before we started today, we talked a little bit about, we were talking about, today's COVID-19 teaching and some of the challenges there that teachers, students, parents have to face each and every day, right? And who else better to ask than you? When we bring our guests in here, we always like to, end the show with asking them to give us, one or two things that people can take away from, whether it's advice or just, telling a story, whatever you like. But thinking about what's happening today, in the real world, right? COVID-19, 2021. What kind of advice would you give a teacher over a phone call?
It's rather hard because they have it a lot harder than I did. I've sat here now for about 45 minutes, and I'm not sure I could sit in front of a group of kids all day long and try and teach. So I am hats off to them. Hats off to them. I would say just because don't don't become a friend to your students, no matter what. You can become friends because I consider you all my friends, and there's a lot of you all out there that I consider friends. But when you are teaching, you have to be the authority figure. You really do. And they have to know that you're in charge, and they have to know that you mean what you say and you say what you mean. And you have to do that with students, you have to do that with parents, and you have to try and do that with administration, because I know the biggest thing I see from teachers right now on the internet is failure rate. They want everybody to pass. Everybody is not going to pass. If they're trying their hardest, yes. But had I been an administrator, that would have been one thing that I would not have worried about. But it appears that there are a lot of them worried about. But just stand by what you believe and hang in there.
I really like that you said to stand by what you believe with administrators. Gosh, I think that's so critical. In the business world, we call that to manage up, right? You've got, in a business, you got your subordinates, you got the people you work with, but there's always tricky when you're trying to manage up, right? Whether it's an executive group or whether it's the owners of a company, whatever you want to call them. In the teaching world, that's the administration. And it's hard because then you have we were talking about this, right? About the testing, that's the state's test and all that. Then you have the state, right? That you got to do, but it is so critical. And parents, us too, right? We got to get informed. We got to get involved and be involved with the community. But again, I totally commend you for what you did and what everybody's doing today.
I do as well because my girls. Well, our youngest was we candidly say a COVID senior. Her spring semester was last year, But there was not a lot she had to do on that semester. But our neighbors had littles in elementary and so many others, and we got to if you. And by the way, Italy and I have always been very involved in every level of the girls' education. So we had an idea, but if you didn't, if you did not know what it takes, you sure found out. Certainly in 2020, and we continue to kind of go in that way. So, we keep saying the same thing, but it's a calling. It's an admirable profession that you always knew you wanted to do.
Ms. Reinhardt, we have one comment here, and I'm just going to read it because I think it's an excellent comment. I think it's Itna Adarste. I'm so sorry.
It's Andy Estrada. He just spells it backwards.
Oh, my bad. So he's saying, great podcast, brought back a lot of good memories. Thank you, Ms. Reinhardt. We're proud parents of two Solros graduates and the Estrada. I guess I should have read the ending. I do agree. It was a lot of fun. I was really looking forward to our podcast tonight, Ms. Reinhardt. I think it's perfect timing again with our teachers out there. It's always nice to talk to somebody that's had so many years, so many accolades, and just so close to students and parents. I wanna personally and my brother as well. Thank you for tonight. I know that our time is precious. That's something that we can't always. Well, we can never have back, and so you being with us today, we're very thankful, and how we told you, very excited as well.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Reinhardt, and I'm going to send you a kiss because I really do feel that for you. And we talked, and everybody you talk to, you send your love to them, and we're sending our love to you. Thank you so much for your time. I know you had to drive a little ways to daughter's house, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I love you all, and God bless you.
God bless you, Miss Reinhardt. So for my brother, we are problems.
And for my brother, and opportunities. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.